I'm Richard Bellamy, and I used to think I was a man with a pretty straightforward life. I worked in logistics, came home at 6, mowed the lawn on Saturdays, and folded laundry on Sundays while football played in the background. I married Susan 9 years ago. Everyone told me she was a catch, charming, book-smart, and the kind of woman who remembered birthdays and refilled the ice trays without being asked. And I believed them. Hell, I still half believe them. You don't just erase 9 years because your brain tells you something doesn't line up. That's the worst part, the doubt. It sneaks in like a draft from a cracked window. You can't see it, but you feel it down to your bones. We live in Greenville, Ohio. You've never heard of it unless you've driven through on your way to somewhere else. It's the kind of town where Dairy Queen closes for the winter, and people still call the local Walmart the new one, even though it's been there since 2006. Susan works in the registrar's office at the community college. I manage freight at a regional warehouse just off I-70. We're the kind of couple that sends joint Christmas cards. Nothing flashy, just our faces, maybe a dog if I ever convinced her to get one. We don't have kids. That's another thing. Not for lack of trying. There were doctors and appointments and polite rejections from adoption agencies that we chalked up to bad luck or bad timing, or both. Things started slipping around March. Not dramatically, not at first. It was subtle, the way erosion sneaks up on a coastline. You don't notice the damage until the porch is hanging over empty space. She got quieter. Not cold, not angry, just less present. Our conversations got more transactional. Do we have eggs? What's for dinner? Have you seen my beige flats? There was nothing sharp enough to cut with. Just a dull pressure building over weeks. Maybe that's why it took me so long to acknowledge it. I thought we were just hitting a rough patch. Every couple hits a wall, right? But this wall had too many things hanging on it that didn't belong. Take the light switch in the hallway. I replaced it myself last year. I remember it because I got electrocuted like an idiot. Thing is, about a month ago, I noticed a smudge on the plate lipstick. A soft, coral-colored thumbprint that didn't match anything Susan owns. That may sound small, stupid even. But Susan wears red or nothing. I know because I've been replacing her tubes of classic ruby since 2015. Then there was the calendar. We keep a shared Google Calendar. Practical, not romantic. Appointments, dinner with friends, work travel, reminders to cancel streaming services we never use. One day, I noticed Susan had entered a meeting labeled Follow-up, AC. I asked her if we were having problems with the air conditioning. She looked at me like I'd asked if we owned a camel. No, she said. That's a check-in with the academic committee. But the college calendar listed no such meeting. I checked. Twice. It's public information, and I'm nothing if not methodical. Maybe I'm just paranoid, I thought. Maybe I'm bored. That's the thing about marriage. If it goes on long enough, you start to suspect the floorboards even when nothing's creaking. But something was creaking. I just didn't know what it was yet. I tried talking to her. I really did. One night after dinner, I put my fork down and asked, "Are we good?" She smiled. Not the real kind. The customer service kind. Of course we are. Then she stood, scraped her plate, and left me at the table. That was when I started writing things down. Not journaling. I'm not that poetic. Just notes. Times, dates, odd behaviors. Tuesday, came home with hair wet. Said she showered at work, even though the staff bathrooms don't have showers. Thursday, she left her laptop open, minimized a browser window when she saw me. No, I didn't look. But she minimized it fast. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even jealous. I was confused. Because Susan didn't act like someone who was cheating. She acted like someone who was preparing for something. Like a woman packing her emotional bags in small, invisible pieces. And the weirdest part? She got nicer. Sweeter. Like guilt was frosting every word. She even offered to go with me to my cousin Jeremy's wedding in Dayton, something she'd normally try to avoid at all costs. She made me coffee in the mornings again. Wore my old Ohio State hoodie. Kissed my cheek before bed. That's when it hit me. She wasn't trying to fix the marriage. She was trying to make me feel safe enough not to look deeper. I remember the moment the penny really dropped. We were watching an old episode of Law and Order, and Susan laughed at a joke from the detective, a running joke she'd never laughed at before. She hated that show, called it propaganda and lazy writing. But now she chuckled like she'd been watching it her whole life. Either she changed her mind, or someone else's preferences were bleeding into hers. Still, I didn't want to be the guy who accuses without proof. I didn't want to become that husband. So I tested her in little ways. Nothing invasive, just subtle reality checks. I asked her if she wanted to watch a movie we'd seen a dozen times, The American President, her favorite. She shrugged. Sure, I guess. Guess? She used to tear up at the trailer. I asked her if she wanted to do our fall trip to Hocking Hills. We'll see, she said. We always went. Rain or shine. It was our thing. She was unplugging. That's the only way I can describe it. Like watching someone slide out of a life you built together, inch by inch, like they're backing out of a room in slow motion while keeping eye contact. I started rehearsing conversations in my head. What I'd say if I caught her. What I'd do if I confirmed something. Would I scream? Cry? Pack a bag? Instead, I bought a new notebook and titled the first page, If I'm wrong, I'll burn this. That was 2 weeks ago. The notebook is almost full now. And tonight, I found something that doesn't just feel off, it is off. It doesn't fit. It can't fit. A subscription confirmation in her email for a service I didn't know she used. A detail she couldn't have fabricated without tripping over her own story. I know what I have to do now. I'm done waiting for her to hand me the truth. Next part? That's where it gets interesting. I don't find out the usual way. No lipstick on a collar. No stranger's text. No shady hotel charges. This isn't one of those stories. It's my story. And I'm about to outsmart the woman who thought I was too dull to notice. You ready? Because what I found changes everything. I'm not proud of how I found out. Not because it was underhanded, it wasn't, but because it made me realize just how long I'd been looking without admitting it to myself. Like I said before, Susan wasn't stupid. She knew how to cover her tracks. There were no flirty messages left open on a laptop, no perfume I didn't recognize, no receipts from out-of-town dinners. I wasn't married to a soap opera villain. I was married to a woman who knew how to be discreet. Too discreet. So I stopped looking for what she was hiding and started looking for what she was forgetting to hide. That's when the real trail opened up. Let me back up a bit. 2 weeks ago, Susan signed up for something called LedgerSpan. If you've never heard of it, don't feel bad. I hadn't either. It's a private subscription service that offers financial traceability across shared assets. Translation: it tracks spending from joint accounts in a more detailed, customizable way. She didn't tell me about it, which would have been fine if we weren't the type of couple who still split things 50-50. Yes, we're one of those modern marriages. Joint savings, separate checking, transparency by agreement. I found out about LedgerSpan by accident. She left her Gmail open. I didn't go digging. I was looking for an Amazon return receipt we needed for a coffee grinder. That's when I saw the welcome email. Thank you for joining LedgerSpan Premium. Your expense sharing partner has been added. Expense sharing partner. We already had met. Why would she need another finance app? And who is this partner? Here's the kicker. LedgerSpan's emails are minimal. No names, no direct links. But there was a line that gave me a weird itch between the ears. We'll notify your partner if shared thresholds are exceeded. Shared thresholds. That's code for, if you're both using this account and someone spends over a certain amount, both get pinged. Except I never got pinged. So curiosity took over. I went to the website and clicked Forgot Password. Entered her email. They sent a reset link. Now listen, before you throw me in this snooping husband category, let me be crystal clear. I didn't use that link. I didn't need to. I was watching her screen 2 days later when she logged into LedgerSpan from her work laptop at the dining table. She thought I was watching TV. I wasn't. I was watching her reflection in the microwave door. Yes, I know how that sounds. No, I'm not sorry. She pulled up a pie chart. LedgerSpan loves those, and for a split second, I saw the account name of her partner. It wasn't a name. It was an email. First initial, last name, 2 digits. At oakridgeaccreditunion.com. Oak Ridge Credit Union. Small, local bank. I'd been there once years ago to close an old account from college. That was all I needed. I opened a private tab on my phone and searched the email handle. Cross-referenced it with Oak Ridge employee pages. Took about 20 minutes, but I found it. Derek Langford. 38. Mortgage advisor. Divorced. Works 4 blocks from the community college. I stared at the name like it would confess something. But it didn't. Just sat there. Boring and bald and true. Now, I wasn't gonna play dumb. I wasn't gonna follow him or stake out the parking lot or install spyware. I'm a grown man with a steady pulse and a union job. So I called Oak Ridge the next morning. I said I was looking to open a home equity line of credit and I wanted to speak with a mortgage advisor. Could I make an appointment? Sure, the receptionist said. Derek has an opening Thursday at noon. Perfect. So Thursday at 11:57, I walked into that warm little bank, shook the man's hand, and introduced myself as Richard Bellamy. Now, and this is important, I never mentioned Susan. Not once. I let him lead. He offered me water. We talked about market conditions. He asked about my current mortgage. Been in the same house 9 years, I said. Bought it with my wife, Susan. You know her? I said it offhand, like you would if you thought he might know her. His face didn't twitch. Didn't even flicker. Nope, can't say I do, he said. But Bellamy, that name rings a bell. He smiled, then moved on. Liar. When I left, I walked past the break room and glanced sideways. Taped on the bulletin board, a printout of October birthdays. I wasn't looking for it, but I saw it anyway. Susan Bellamy, October 19th, special friend of the team. The guts on this guy. I left without another word. Got in my truck. Drove to the Speedway lot and sat there with a cup of coffee that tasted like brake fluid, running over everything in my head. This guy wasn't just seeing my wife. He was linked to her finances, which meant this wasn't just infidelity. It was an entanglement. That night, I watched Susan get home and pull out her reusable bag of groceries, all organic, all compostable. She kissed me on the cheek. I didn't flinch. I kissed her back. She told me about a coworker who got engaged. I asked what we were having for dinner. Pasta, she said. Feta, olives, tomatoes. She never liked olives. But guess who did? According to Derek's staff profile on the Oak Ridge newsletter, favorite snack, olives and cheddar cubes. Don't knock it. I took a bite of dinner that night and chewed like I was mashing glass. But I didn't say a word. Instead, I waited. Because now, I had a plan. I started small. Left a sticky note on the fridge that said, let's audit our expenses soon. Saw some weird stuff on the calendar. I said it like a joke. She laughed too loud. The kind of laugh people use to cover terror. Then I bought 2 tickets to the Harvest Gala at her college. She hadn't mentioned it, probably planned to skip it. But when I handed her the envelope, she looked pale. You bought these? She asked. Sure did, I said. They were running out of spots. Figured it'd be nice to see your world for a change. The gala was a fundraiser. Faculty, staff, local partners, board members, a who's who of small-town ambition. You know who sponsors it every year? Oak Ridge Credit Union. And guess whose name was listed in bold on the donor card at the check-in table? Derek Langford. I watched her look at the name, then at me, then back at the name. I smiled and said, let's get a drink. At the open bar, Derek was 3 people away, holding a white wine and laughing like he owned the room. He hadn't seen us yet. Susan turned to me and said, you know what? I think I'm coming down with something. Let's skip this. Can't, I said. They already scanned our tickets. Then I leaned in close and said something I'd never said before, not even during arguments. Don't insult me. She froze. And that's when I knew. I didn't need a confession. I didn't need evidence. I didn't even need the LedgerSpan login anymore. All I needed was what I saw in her eyes right then, that wild flicker of fear when someone realizes the charade's over and they don't have the next act planned. So now it's game on. She tried to play the quiet game. Tried to be clever. But she forgot something. I've lived with her 9 years. I know Rattel's better than she knows her own reflection. Part 3? That's when I corner her. No shouting. No tears. Just the truth. And maybe a mirror or two. You ready for that? Because she wasn't. There's a certain kind of silence that only comes after someone's been caught. Not caught doing something illegal, not even something messy, but caught trying to lie to someone who's already 3 steps ahead. That was the air in our house the morning after the Harvest Gala. Susan was buttering toast like it was a normal Tuesday. The knife scraped against the plate, slow and even. Her eyes flicked up every few seconds to check if I was watching her. I was, but I didn't speak. I let her hang in it. That's the part no one tells you about betrayal, the moment before you say it out loud, when the betrayer still thinks they've got a shred of cover, and the betrayed is just watching, waiting, measuring the moment to drop the curtain. She placed my plate in front of me like nothing had changed. 2 eggs, scrambled. 1 slice of toast. Black coffee. She even remembered the little pat of butter on the side. I looked at the toast and said, so, how long have you and Derek been seeing each other? The sound of the ceramic mug hitting the table was louder than I expected. I didn't even look up. I just took a bite of egg. She didn't respond right away. She reached for her glass of orange juice like she needed time to reboot her programming. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice steady, but 1 octave too high. Susan, I said calmly, you really want to start this conversation with a lie? Silence. I finally met her eyes. I've known for a while. I just didn't know who. Then I saw that email from Ledgerspan. Found the shared account. Traced it to his name. Got an appointment. Saw his face. Saw your birthday on the break room bulletin board. Saw your reaction at the gala. Still silence. I leaned back in my chair. And here you are, pretending it's still toast and eggs and Tuesday. Susan exhaled, long and low. Her hand was trembling. She tried to hide it by tucking her hair behind her ear. Richard, she started, her voice dipping into the please let's stay civil tone I'd heard during holiday arguments. I didn't plan for this to happen. Of course not, I said. Nobody ever does. They just trip and fall into emotional affairs. Happens all the time, right? You click on the same budgeting app and boom, love. She flinched. Not from anger. From embarrassment. I stood up and took my plate to the sink. I'm not interested in the excuses. I'm interested in the timeline. I turned and faced her. When did it start? She swallowed. About 5 months ago. That long? She nodded. Before or after the summer board retreat? She blinked. Caught again. Before. And the retreat? Was that where it escalated? She looked away. I nodded. Got it. I wasn't angry. Not in the way TV wants you to be. No shouting. No broken dishes. Just a cold, detached checklist running in my brain. The way you'd catalog a broken appliance before tossing it out. And when were you planning to tell me? I asked. I wasn't, she said, almost too softly to hear. There it was. The truth. The whole bitter core. I was hoping it would fizzle out, she continued. I still cast downward. That it was just a phase. I stared at her. You don't fizzle out of something you're sharing financials with. She opened her mouth to respond, then shut it again. There was nothing to say. She'd exposed herself more in that silence than she could have with any speech. You really thought I wouldn't notice? I asked. You thought I was that checked out? No, she said. I thought you'd be too decent to pry. Now that was rich. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Not because it was funny. Because it was so wildly absurd that she'd try to pull the high ground on me while sitting in a hole she dug herself. You used my decency against me. That's bold. She finally looked at me. I didn't mean to hurt you. No. You just didn't care if you did. Boom. There it was. The line that cleared the air. She stood up, arms folded. So what now? Are you going to throw me out? Scream? Make a scene? I shrugged. I'm not throwing you out. A flicker of hope crossed her face. That's how little she understood me. I'm not screaming, I continued. And I'm not making a scene. Then what? I took a deep breath. I'm going to let you sit in it. She tilted her head. What? I'm not doing anything. Yet. I want you to live in this awkward little purgatory where I know, and you know I know. Because the truth is, Susan, you didn't just betray me. You underestimated me. And that stings worse. She looked like she was about to cry. I didn't flinch. Don't you dare cry right now. I'm not. You don't get to be the sad one here. You get to be the one who owns it. Fully. No rewrites, no pretty framing. She sat back down at the table. The tension had snapped. Now it was just wreckage. Have you told him I know? She shook her head. Good, I said. Don't. Why? Because I'm not done yet. Her eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means I'm not storming out or moving into a hotel or slashing your tires like some bad Netflix character. I'm going to keep being exactly who I am. Quiet, steady, and very, very watchful. You're going to make me live with this. No, I said. You made you live with this. I'm just letting the silence do the talking. And I did. For the next 2 weeks, I said nothing more about it. We lived in the same house, slept in the same bed, rotated around each other like satellites. But I didn't touch her. Didn't kiss her. Didn't argue. She tried, here and there, made dinner, asked about my day, mentioned old memories. But I gave her nothing. Just polite, detached civility. Until the day I found what I was looking for. Ledgerspan, as it turns out, doesn't just track shared accounts. It links spending categories down to merchant ID. And Susan, bless her forgetful soul, used our joint card to pay for an Uber on a night she told me she was working late. The destination? Not the college. It was a wine bar downtown. The same one Derek had checked into on Facebook earlier that night, which I only knew because I made a burner account and watched his activity like a hawk. Again, no phone snooping. No hacking. Just public info and her own stupid slip-up. I printed the receipt, slid it into her purse. Said nothing. That night, she came into the living room holding the paper. She stood there, trembling. You put this in my bag? Yep. Why? To see if you'd finally admit it. She looked like she might collapse. I didn't move. I just said, next time you lie to someone, try not to leave a paper trail the size of your ego. And then I got up, walked to the kitchen, and left her standing there. Because the next part wasn't about confrontation. The next part was about consequences. She thinks she's surviving the storm. But I am the storm. I'm just polite enough to let her sit in the eye of it for a little while. There's a very specific kind of satisfaction that comes from holding your cards close while the person across from you has no idea you're about to play the winning hand. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to throw her clothes on the lawn. That's the thing about revenge. If it's loud, it's messy. If it's quiet, it's clean. Surgical. And I wanted clean. Susan wasn't crying anymore. That stopped somewhere between her finding the Uber receipt in her purse and my refusal to so much as flinch when she demanded we talk about this like adults. I think that's when it finally sank in that I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't just some wounded husband pacing the living room with empty threats and wounded pride. No, I was planning. And when I plan, I don't miss. First move, I started smiling again. Not the real kind. The kind people wear in interviews or hostage videos. It made her nervous. Every morning, I'd hand her coffee and ask, anything exciting on your calendar today? She'd hesitate every time, trying to figure out if I'd found something else. I hadn't. Not yet. But I let her stew in that possibility. Second move, I became very interested in our house. We bought it together 9 years ago. Paid a hefty down payment. But the deed? It was in both our names. I changed that. No, I didn't forge anything or kick her out. I didn't have to. What I did was file a quitclaim deed, legally removing myself from the shared title and transferring ownership to a brand new limited liability company I'd quietly created 2 months prior, Bellamy Home Management, LLC. Guess who the sole member of the LLC is? Me. Guess what Susan doesn't know? That the house she thinks she co-owns is now under a corporate veil. And in Ohio, LLCs are protected, assets held under them are insulated. Which meant when things inevitably hit the legal fan, I'd already boxed her out of the most valuable thing we shared. She'd still be on the mortgage, of course. But the equity? Controlled by me. And no, that isn't shady, it's strategy. Legal, above board, and beautifully infuriating. Third move, I called Derek's boss. Not to confront him. No. That would have been satisfying but short-sighted. Instead, I made a professional inquiry. Posed as a potential client. I asked if Oak Ridge had any conflict of interest policies regarding employees engaging in financial partnerships with clients or vendors from organizations they have relationships with. See, Susan's community college banked through Oak Ridge. I knew that. She knew that. But what Derek's boss didn't know was that Derek had a special friend of the team he was dating, and that friend just happened to help approve vendor contracts for the college. Now, I didn't report him. I just raised the question. The rest took care of itself. 3 days later, Susan came home looking rattled. Told me she was having a weird week. Said there were some changes at work. I didn't pry. I just nodded and asked if she wanted me to pick up Thai food that night. She didn't touch her pad CEW. Fourth move, I cashed out the Roth IRA we'd opened together. Not all of it, just my half. We'd always kept it evenly split, even though the contributions came mostly from me. I moved my share into a separate fund under my name. Paid the penalty. Worth it. Susan didn't notice. She never looked at the financial statements. Always said numbers gave her a headache. Bless her heart. Then came the piece de resistance. The revenge she never saw coming. We'd been invited to our friends Josh and Megan's lake house for the annual Summers Over weekend. Cornhole, beers, bad music, and grilled hot dogs, the works. Every year, Susan went reluctantly. But this year, I insisted we attend. Tradition, I said. What she didn't know is that Megan and I had talked. See, Megan's sister happens to work at Oak Ridge. Small towns, small worlds. And Megan's sister? She'd overheard some things. Namely, Derek boasting about how he was just biding his time until Susan left her husband, and how she's emotionally all in but too scared to pull the plug. This was not pillow talk. This was break room chatter. And now it was ammunition. So at the lake house, while everyone was sipping spiked seltzer and arguing over who cheated at charades, I waited for the right moment. I stood up, clinked a fork on my glass. Hey, I said, can I make a toast? Everyone turned. Even Susan. She was sitting across from me in one of those cheap Adirondack chairs, wine glass in hand, smile frozen in place. I just wanted to raise a glass to my wife, I said, raising my drink. To Susan. For her loyalty, her commitment, and her very open approach to marriage. Laughter rippled, awkward, confused. Susan's smile faltered. I kept going. Turns out, Susan's been piloting a little side project. A solo spin-off, if you will, with someone from her workplace's favorite bank. Let's all take a moment to thank Derek Langford for keeping her so financially informed. Silence. The group froze. Susan turned a shade of red I didn't know existed in nature. Richard, she hissed. Can we talk? Oh, absolutely, I said. I'd love to talk. We can talk about the shared expenses. The emails. The fact that he told his coworkers you were his backup plan, if his ex didn't take him back. Or maybe how the college might be reevaluating vendor contracts because of your conflict of interest. Now Josh, God bless him, tried to pivot. All right, man, maybe we... No, it's okay, I said. We're all friends here. Just figured everyone deserved to know. And hey, Susan, if you're wondering why your name's not on the homeowner's insurance policy anymore, that'd be because you're not the owner. Gasps. Actual, movie-worthy gasps. I tossed back the rest of my drink and nodded. Anyway, enjoy the burgers. Then I walked off the deck, down to the dock, and sat alone, listening to the wind move through the trees while the world behind me caught fire. She didn't follow. She didn't say a word for the rest of the weekend. When we got home, she slept in the guest room. 3 days later, I got a text while I was at work. We need to talk tonight. Sure. I figured we did. But by then, the game was over. The score was tallied. She tried to play me, but I don't lose. And in part 5, she finally says what she's been holding in. Too late, of course. But that's the thing about confessions. They're always late. She waited until the house was dark. I knew she would. That's how people operate when they've run out of power. They wait until the lights are low enough to pretend they're on even footing again. I was in the den, watching a rerun of Pawn Stars, of all things. The kind of show you put on when you don't want to think too hard about the people you live with. The guy on screen was arguing over the value of a vintage jukebox. Said it was worth more because it had emotional history. Sure, buddy. Don't we all? I heard her footsteps on the hardwood, the hesitant kind. The kind that only show up when someone's finally worked up the nerve to face a disaster they built with their own hands. She didn't knock. Just stood there in the doorway like a ghost. Can we talk? I muted the TV. You're already doing it, I said. She stepped in, slow, like the room might reject her. Susan sat on the edge of the armchair across from me, hands folded in her lap like she was in some kind of therapy session. Hair pulled back. No makeup. That used to be my favorite version of her, casual, quiet, real. Now it just looked like strategy. I don't know where to start, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I said nothing. I wasn't there to guide her. If she was finally going to say something meaningful, she could find her own road to it. She inhaled. I never meant for it to go this far. I raised an eyebrow. You mean the affair? Or the part where I exposed you at the lake house and gutted our joint finances without you realizing? That stung. She winced. I deserve that, she admitted. Glad we agree. She paused. I've been thinking a lot. About us. About what I did. I leaned back. And I think I got bored. That wasn't the answer I expected. I blinked. Bored. She nodded, slowly. Not with you. Not exactly. Just with who I was around you. That one landed. She kept going. We built this life, the mortgage, the dinners, the weekend routines. And I think I let it smother me. I stopped being curious. About myself. About anything. Derek was. She trailed off. New. I offered. Exciting? Not married to you. She flinched. He made me feel different. Alive. Like I mattered. You could have tried therapy, I said. Hell, you could have tried yoga. Her mouth opened, then closed. She had nothing. You want me to tell you I understand? I asked. I guess I hoped. You hoped I'd say what? That I forgive you? I don't expect forgiveness, she said quickly. But I hoped you'd understand how I got there. How you got there. Susan, I don't care how you got there. I care that you stayed there. For months. And then you looked me in the eye every day like you weren't burying a landmine under our marriage. She went quiet. I pressed on. Do you even know what you killed? She looked up. I was content, I said. Not bored. Not stuck. Content. I liked our routines. I liked our dumb calendar alerts and your aversion to mushrooms. I liked the stability. And you looked at that and saw a cage. Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't soften. I thought love meant building something. Turns out for you, it was about keeping options open. She tried to speak. I held up a hand. No, you don't get to explain anymore. I know the script. You felt ignored. I stopped being exciting. You needed to find yourself. Spare me the TED Talk. She covered her mouth with her hand, like she might break if she opened it. I sat forward. Here's what you don't get, Susan. I would have forgiven you if you'd come to me. If you'd said, I'm unhappy. I'm confused. I'd have done the work. I'd have shown up. But you didn't want honesty. You wanted the thrill without the cost. She choked out a quiet sob. I didn't move. You betrayed me like it was a hobby. And then you acted like I owed you silence. Like I should just let you have your side project until you figured out whether I was still worth keeping. She looked up, red-eyed. I never stopped loving you. I laughed. Actually laughed. You don't do that to someone you love. You use someone you love when you're scared to start over. And that's exactly what you did. We sat in that for a minute. Her wiping her eyes. Me staring into the carpet like it held answers. Finally, she whispered, what happens now? I shrugged. We separate. Cleanly. No court battles. No drama. You're really done, she said, almost like she couldn't believe it. I was done the moment you minimized that browser window when I walked into the room. Her lips parted, stunned. Yeah, I said. You forgot I notice everything. Silence stretched between us again. This one felt final. She stood. I guess I'll start packing. You should, I said. I've already called my cousin. He's got a spare room. I'll crash there for a few weeks while you figure out where you're going. We're going to list the house. Proceeds will be split after the LLC is dissolved. I've already talked to a lawyer. You'll get your share. She blinked again. You're being kind. No, I said. I'm being fair. You don't deserve kind. And with that, she left the room. I turned the TV back on. Pawn Stars was still playing. Now they were appraising a Civil War letter. The guy said it was a fake. Funny thing about fakes. They always look real at first. You just have to know where to look. Part 6? That's where I walk out clean. And she gets to sit in the rubble. People assume the end of a marriage is a single moment. One fight. One door slam. One suitcase dragged across hardwood floors. But that's not how it works. Not really. The end isn't loud. It's slow. It's quiet. It's Wednesday morning toast with no eye contact. It's the silence between two people who used to laugh at nothing. It's how it was when I left Susan. No dramatic exits. No final screams. I walked out the front door with a duffel bag slung over my shoulder, nodded at the lawn I'd mowed 100 times, and got in my truck like I was just heading to work. Except I didn't come back. I stayed at my cousin Tyler's for a few weeks. He's one of those guys who thinks everything's either a joke or a barbecue opportunity. He didn't pry, didn't ask why I showed up with a bag and a quiet look that said I wasn't ready to explain. He just slapped a beer into my hand and said, whatever happened, you'll figure it out. Just don't use my razor. It was enough. The house sold faster than I expected. Turned out all those little improvements I'd done, the sealed driveway, the attic insulation, the refinished guest bathroom paid off. We got 3 offers over asking. I picked the one that included a heartfelt letter about raising kids in a home built with love. I didn't have the heart to tell them that the love in that house had expired like milk left in the sun. Susan moved into a rental near her sister. She said she needed space to heal. I didn't reply. I had nothing left to offer her. We finalized the separation without court. I kept the truck. She kept the smaller car. We split the savings. I let her have the furniture. Not out of kindness, out of closure. I didn't want a single chair that remembered her weight. Friends called. Some picked sides. Most stayed neutral. That's how it goes. People don't want to choose. They want to pretend everyone's a little right and a little wrong. But there was no middle in this. There was me, blindsided and steady. And there was her, selfish and smiling through it. I never confronted Derek again. I didn't need to. Word got around that he was let go for some undisclosed HR violation. The vendor contract was reassigned. The college restructured part of the registrar's office. And Susan? Well, last I heard, she's still there. Quietly tucked into a job she once claimed was just a paycheck, now pretending everything's fine while the walls remember. She emailed once. Subject line, closure. 3 lines. Said she was sorry. Said she still cared. Said she hoped I found happiness. I didn't reply. Not because I was bitter. Because closure doesn't come from the person who broke you. It comes from the one who put himself back together. So I did. I moved to a small place near the river. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, open kitchen, creaky floors I don't mind. I got a dog, finally. A mutt named Baxter with a lopsided ear and no sense of personal space. He sleeps on the couch I bought secondhand, drools in his sleep, and greets me like I've returned from war every time I get back from the grocery store. I started fishing again. Not for sport, just for quiet. Something about the water calms my brain in a way nothing else ever has. Maybe because it doesn't lie. You drop a line in and wait. It gives you what it gives you. No pretending. No gaslighting. No half-truths wearing lipstick. I've been on a few dates. Nothing serious. I don't rush anymore. I ask real questions. I look for signs. Subscribe to the channel.